Now, if this past weekend's Star Wars celebration didn't do enough to confirm that the sequel trilogy was not only here to stay in the canon, but was going to be fully embraced with the announcement of a new movie featuring Rey, well, this latest episode of The Mandalorian should have absolutely cemented it. In fact, I can't help but think that the timing on all of this was no mere rather giant coincidence, but that it was instead a rather carefully planned out or coordinated thing. Meaning that when deciding when Season 3 of The Mandalorian would start, they aligned it so that this episode would drop right after Celebration and that aforementioned Rey movie announcement. A sort of rip the band-aid off all at once approach. Just throw it all out there that it's all going to be connected to the sequels, that any and all rumors of those films being retconned are false. And then cross your fingers if you're Lucasfilm and Disney and see how the fan base reacts, especially those who, of course, didn't like those films. And though I think I've made it pretty clear with my last few videos that I'm not entirely sure a Rey film at this point in time is the best or smartest move on the part of Disney and Lucasfilm, I've also said that I've sort of been preparing myself for all of this, for the sequels to be embraced, and I'm curious, if not super excited, to see how they plan on bridging the gap to them and making those films work, or how they plan to iron out a very, very rough story presented in those films. But instead of discussing or worrying about that all too much right now, let's instead look at the episode itself independent of all of that. And I must say, this was a rather good episode all around, probably both the best and my favorite of the season. And that's in no small part because it felt like we got quite a bit of story here without it ever feeling like it was intentionally trying to stall out or drag things out like some episodes do. And it was all then coupled with plenty of really good action and a splash of humor that was maybe borderline too silly, but I think ended up working. Anyway, to dig more into the episode, it opens with Elia Kane on Coruscant meeting up with an Imperial probe droid that scans her and then connects her with Moff Gideon. And I don't think anyone is all too surprised to see her working for Gideon. I think I'm surprised at how rather quickly she's worked her way up the ranks of the Amnesty program and has been in or had access to some rather sensitive locations. I mean, let's not forget she was left alone with Dr. Pershing while he was in the Mind Flayer. She was in the control room and she cranked that thing up to 11 on him and, as far as we know, pretty much scrambled his brain. She was also there when Captain Teva requested that the New Republic intervene or aid in the defense of or liberation of Nevarro from pirates. She was there to overhear the whole conversation and even basically had her opinion asked about it. And thus, because of that, she's now able to relay to Gideon that it was Mandalorians, the unification of Bo-Katan's followers and Din's cult, that kicked the pirates off of Nevarro, and the Remnant, or at least Gideon, has some sort of need or purpose for them being there. Captain Teva was right when he assumed they may be working together. The Remnant and the pirates may be working together for reasons, or that the pirates are simply working for the Remnant because they're being paid. Either way, Gideon then takes this information back to the Imperial Remnant Shadow Council for what turns out to be a pretty big and important information dump. And this council is something first seen in the Aftermath trilogy of books. They're basically some of the leftover high-ranking Imperials who have different kind of areas that they preside over, and they are trying to restore the Empire behind the scenes without getting on the New Republic's radar. We hear about how they are kind of holding back their forces to fool the New Republic into thinking they're not much of a threat. Oh, and speaking of the Aftermath books, I was surprised not to see Grand Admiral Rae Sloane on this council, or on it anymore, I should say. She was on it in the Aftermath trilogy. I mean, she's been a rather prominent character in the new novels, going all the way back to the very first book of the new canon, where we see her as a captain, and that's in the book A New Dawn, which is the meeting of Hera and Kanan from Rebels. And again, I'm really surprised not to see her here because of that, because of how much time they've spent building her up in the books. I just thought it'd be a given she'd be here and to try to connect that to the books in the new canon. But whatever, I guess. And we also see Captain Pellaeon at this meeting, a character that originates or goes all the way back to Heir to the Empire and has also been seen in the new canon, including when we last saw him being in an episode of Rebels at the Battle of Lothal, where I thought he may have perished, but obviously he didn't. And here he is, no surprise really, talking about Thrawn and his return, which is interesting because he made it sound like he knows that Thrawn is back, or knows where he is and what he's up to, but the rest of the council hasn't seen him and doesn't know what he's up to exactly. Gideon even suggests that new leadership may be needed or required because of his absence, or because they're sick of waiting for him to come back with the fleet. And speaking of that, it also sounded like between Thrawn and Commandant Brandel Hux, who, yes, is the father of Armitage Hux, or the Hux we see in the sequels, who we also first see in the Aftermath trilogy as a kid. Anyway, it seems possible, if not likely, that Thrawn is doing something with the fleet, which I'm sure we'll learn more about eventually in the Ahsoka series. And I'm wondering and hoping that maybe Thrawn has been using a big chunk of whatever remains of the Imperial fleet to fight the Grisk alongside the Chiss Ascendancy. For those who have been reading the new canon Thrawn books, you'll know it's been a pretty big deal. The Grisk, I mean. And it's going to be, shall we say, rather frustrating if that's just sort of dropped and forgotten about in favor of implying Thrawn is up to something else or has different motivations now. And so my hopes right now are that at least part of what Thrawn has been up to, again, involves helping the Chiss against the Grisk, and then the Chiss will maybe aid in rebuilding the Empire or building the First Order, which would then also, in a sense, mean, or could mean, the expansion of the Chiss Ascendancy. That could be another reason why they would help. And if this is all the case, then we can, of course, have Timothy Zahn write another book, or better yet, another trilogy, that goes over everything with Thrawn since Rebels, and that includes the Grisk and Chiss War. It also just helps flesh out the whole Mandoverse time period a little bit more. But getting back to the episode now, and in particular this Shadow Council meeting, we also hear something called Project Necromancer mentioned, that Thrawn's return with the fleet will buy time for it to be completed by Hux, which, though nothing more is said about it other than the name, I think the name leads us to a fairly educated guess about what it involves, that being, since it's called Necromancer, it's probably about the return of Palpatine from the dead, and they're working on all of that on his clone body and, everything we will see in the sequels or in The Rise of Skywalker. And so again, this was all a pretty big information dump that they do manage to work into the episode or make it relevant to the story of the episode, because Gideon is asking for resources to help deal with the Mandalorians, which the Council agrees will be a threat if all of them unify and retake Mandalore. And so Gideon gets what he's asking for. He gets some ships and some Praetorian guards, and we'll see that turn out to be bad for our heroes later on. And speaking of Mandalorians, we see Bo-Katan and her former and now again followers arrive on Nevarro with their fleet to meet up with, let's call them, Din's cult, though they are not really his cult or his followers as much as they listen to the Armorer. And I really liked how she was the one who sort of broke the ice or eased the tension when these two factions first meet and are basically staring at each other face to face or helmet to face. And she kind of says, hey, why don't we make you all some dinner, you newcomers, even though we won't take off our helmets to eat with you. Anyway, while on Nevarro, though they don't stay there too long, which I'm sure Greef Karga probably isn't too happy about. He thought he was getting some Mandalorian protectors, and instead he'll be back to having nothing. Either way, Bo gives a rousing speech about returning and retaking Mandalore, where she asks for volunteers to find and secure the Great Forge, where all of the ones you'd expect to volunteer for the mission. Eventually, after a long dramatic pause, of course, they do indeed volunteer for the mission. But before any of that, and getting back to Greef Karga for a second, he has another surprise for Din beyond just a nice bottle of Coruscant wine, which is that the Anzelians have fixed up IG-11, though he'll now be called IG-12, and sell more action figures, and he can be ridden around in like a vehicle by Grogu because all of the memories from IG-11, all of his programming and all of that has been removed. And no real surprise here, this leads to a cute, kind of borderline too cute or a bit too silly exchange between Din and Grogu, where Grogu keeps hitting the buttons that cause him or cause the IG-12 unit to keep saying yes or no, which overall I gotta admit was a pretty smart or clever move on the writer's part here, on Favreau's part. It's a wise baby step, you could say, on the path to Grogu eventually talking all on his own. Though I do wonder why Din never considered, maybe giving Grogu something sooner that might allow him to communicate. I mean, Din, literally does talk to him all the time, meaning he knows Grogu understands language, which means in turn he should be able to type things back to him. Anyway, because of this, Grogu is now walking and talking and picking up and pushing things better than ever before, thanks to his mech suit, you could call it, which I'm very happy to say was immediately used for a purpose beyond just being cute or to hit buttons to talk, or to pick up random things to eat from a vendor that Din has to pay for, or anything else just completely silly, but was used for what I think is the second biggest character moment for Grogu ever, right behind his big choice from Luke in the Book of Boba Fett. That being when they were all on the Mandalorian pirate ship thing that some of the survivors of A Night of a Thousand Tears, those who didn't get off the planet, that they were on, which I actually thought aesthetically looked pretty cool, but whatever. Either way, while on this ship, Grogu steps up and stops the fight between Paz Vizsla and Axe Wolves that started over a game that both sides had a different take on the rules over, which I thought was pretty interesting to see how different factions had different rules, how they had kind of grown apart, you could say. Either way, why I think this was so good and so important for Grogu is because this wasn't necessarily him just reacting to something that directly affected him or someone he cares about, like when Din is in danger. Nor was this just him flying to a planet Din had pointed to 5 minutes earlier on a screen to get help for Din. This was him. This was Grogu stepping up, coming to a decision of his own accord to do something. And it was something important, and it was a big moment for the story and for the whole story of Mandalore. This simple moment likely went a long way to bringing these two factions together, to realize these two grown men were squabbling over a game and had to have a child come in and separate them and tell them no, 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 over and over. Also then on this pirate Mando ship, we finally get the story of how Moff Gideon got the Darksaber from Bo-Katan, which is that she surrendered it to try and save or spare some of her people from the Empire's wrath, but she was betrayed. She then goes on to say that Mandalore has always been too powerful for an enemy to defeat, but that they always end up losing because of their own division. That's always what destroys them. And if those profound words alone haven't completely solidified in your mind that she is, for better or worse, whether you like it or not, going to be the one who brings all of Mandalore together, in the scene right after this, Din Djarin goes full Jon Snow from Game of Thrones and says that basically you're my queen, and he tells her that her song is not yet written, and that he doesn't care about the Darksaber, that's not why he follows her, that he didn't even know what it really was till she told him about it, and that the others of his clan don't care about it either, that they only follow her because of loyalty, honor, and her character. He then, again, kind of Jon Snow style, pledges himself to serve her, and I'm sure there were some out there, those who are shipping these two, that were kind of hoping Din would take off his helmet and they'd kiss and it'd be all romantic, but let's be real, Pedro Pascal probably wasn't even on set that day. Moving on here, the Mando pirate ship gets attacked and destroyed by a giant monster because we once again needed to show the Mandalorians are completely incapable against giant monsters despite their whole history being about fighting giant monsters. Honestly, I don't know why they keep doing this, why this is a thing all the time, or what point destroying the ship serves the greater story. I suppose it makes it harder for them to traverse the planet, or harder for those who survived what happens in the final part of the episode to get back to the fleet in time to help, though Axe left the fight against, well, let's call them the Beskar troopers early to do just that, to go and try to get help. And speaking of all that and moving into the final act of the episode, I both loved the fight itself and I loved the look of the Beskar troopers. I thought it all looked cool and really good. No complaints about any of that. I liked how the Mandalorians, when they were at close range, they kept kind of looking for the cracks in the armor, shooting them like between the neck or in the neck between the helmet and the shoulders. Thought all of that was really good and cool. Though I gotta say, I'm a little upset at myself for not figuring it out sooner that this is actually where Gideon's base is, though the very moment, the instant I saw what looked like a classic Imperial hallway, I figured it out. I knew they were walking or running right into a trap, which yeah, turned out to be the case. They ended up getting trapped between some doors, save for Din and a couple other no-name red shirt Mandalorians who were killed. And then Gideon shows up in his new Beskar Dark Trooper armor and captures Din. Or should I say the Beskar had captured Din and he just decides to let him live. And here, Gideon talks about how the Dark Troopers have now been perfected, though originally I thought he said something along the lines of how getting rid of the person in the suit was how they were perfected. But now, based on what he said about how many played a part in this program, from Mandalorians to cloners to Jedi, it seems like the grand plan for the Dark Troopers is to put a cloned Jedi, or a cloned Force-sensitive being, into Beskar supersuits, which, yes, that sounds pretty formidable. He also says he's going to destroy the Mandalorian fleet, which gets Bo-Katan to act, to use the Darksaber to try and escape by cutting through the door, leaving Din Djarin behind, who, again, apparently Gideon wants alive for reasons. He says to the Beskar troopers to take him to the debriefing room, so he's probably going to, monologue to him about something he wants to do in the finale next week. You know how these evil geniuses are. They like to tell the good guys what the plan is so that the good guy can eventually stop them, instead of just killing them. Anyway, in all seriousness, Paz Vizsla, who is a character who I have both loved and hated at times, a character who, I gotta say, has been handled really, really well in the limited amount of time and focus he's gotten over this show and his brief stint in the Book of Boba Fett. He stays behind to make sure they can all get away, and he just keeps on firing and firing until his gun literally starts to melt, which was just kind of awesome, I gotta say. And his last words get to be, "This is the way." Though the funny thing is, he was doing pretty well. He actually takes out all the Beskar troopers until the Praetorians show up and they just put him down. And I gotta say, it was nice to see some Red Guards of any kind or any type finally get to do something cool on screen instead of just either standing there or getting force pushed by Yoda. And I thought the Praetorians looked and were pretty much a million times better than they were in The Last Jedi, when we get to watch them slaughtered and literally shredded by Rey and Kylo. Though yes, I know some people really do love that throne room scene, so to each their own. And so, I gotta say, this was a really good, well-paced, action-packed, and story-driven episode that left me excited for the finale next week. A finale that's had the script flipped from the last two seasons, where it was Grogu who needed to be rescued, and this time it's going to be Din. And though it's been a bit of a bumpy path or road to get to this point in the season, some will say the story could have picked up sooner or more often, and I tend to agree with that. Though that said, this honestly, when you step back and look at it, it isn't much different from the first two seasons, both of which took a lot of detours before coming together in the final couple of episodes to do something pretty big and epic. And that's not really meant to be exactly a defense of the season, I think, though I'll say this with an episode left to go where anything could happen. I think, again, this could have been a bit more focused overall, especially with the story expanding in scope and scale and bringing in more characters and plot threads. But if they pull off the finale, overall, I think this will be a pretty decent season. Though again, it really depends on just what happens next week. Well, that's all I got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of this episode and what you think we'll see in the finale next week, and are you excited for it? So you know what to do. Take to the comments below, tell me what you think, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.